Derek Russell believed he knew what loneliness felt like. After 30 years of marriage, 2 grown children, and a career that consumed every waking hour, he thought he understood emptiness. But nothing prepared him for the hollowness that followed his wife's death. Cancer had stolen her in 18 brutal months, leaving him standing in their London townhouse, surrounded by memories and silence. At 55, he found himself asking a question he never imagined. What comes next? I met Derek in the most unlikely of places, a temple garden in Phuket during the monsoon season. I was there photographing the rain-soaked lotus flowers when I noticed him sitting perfectly still on a stone bench, oblivious to the water soaking through his linen shirt. Something about his posture, shoulders curved inward, hands clasped between his knees, spoke of a man who had lost his way. We started talking, and what began as casual conversation between strangers evolved into something deeper. Over the following months, Derek would share a story that would shake my understanding of trust, identity, and the devastating price of loneliness. But before I tell you what happened to my friend, I need you to understand something crucial. This is not a story about prejudice or moral judgment. This is a story about deception, manipulation, and how vulnerability can make even the smartest among us blind to danger. Derek Russell held advanced degrees from Cambridge, managed multi-million-pound investments, and navigated complex international business deals with precision. Yet none of that protected him from what was coming. If this story grabs you, subscribe to this channel. The ending will leave you speechless. Derek's descent began 6 months after his wife's funeral. His children had their own lives. His daughter in Singapore, his son in New York. The London house echoed with emptiness. His colleagues suggested therapy, but Derek found it clinical, disconnected. What he craved was not professional distance, but human warmth, the simple comfort of another heartbeat in the room. His accountant suggested a change of scenery. Take a sabbatical, the man advised. Thailand, Bali. Somewhere the sun doesn't hide behind clouds for months at a time. Derek chose Phuket almost randomly, drawn by photographs of turquoise water and golden sand. He booked a beachfront villa for 3 months, telling himself it was about healing, about finding peace. But deep down, beneath the rational explanations, he was running from the ghost of his wife and the future that stretched before him like an empty highway. The first 2 weeks passed in a blur of morning swims, evening walks, and countless hours staring at the ocean. Derek avoided the tourist areas, preferring quiet beaches where vendors left him alone, and the only sounds were waves and seabirds. He told himself he was content with solitude, that this was exactly what he needed. Then, he met her. Ornanong appeared in his life like a character from a film, beautiful, mysterious, and impossibly present. It happened at a beachside restaurant Derek had begun visiting for dinner. She worked there as a manager, moving between tables with fluid grace, her English accented but flawless. Derek noticed her, of course. Every man in the restaurant noticed her. Long black hair that caught the light, delicate features, a smile that seemed both genuine and somehow sad. But what struck him most was her eyes, dark, intelligent, carrying depths that suggested stories untold. Their first conversation was brief. She recommended the Massaman curry, asked if he was enjoying Phuket, mentioned she had studied hospitality management in Bangkok. Derek found himself returning the next night, and the night after. By the 4th visit, she sat with him after the dinner rush, sharing a pot of jasmine tea while the ocean whispered against the shore. She spoke of her family up country, her dreams of opening her own boutique hotel, the difficulty of making those dreams real in a country where capital and connections mattered more than talent. Derek listened, genuinely interested, asking questions that went beyond polite small talk. For the first time since his wife's death, he felt the fog lifting. Here was someone who looked at him not with pity or uncomfortable sympathy, but with genuine curiosity. Someone who laughed at his dry British humor, who challenged his observations about Thai culture, who made him feel alive again. 2 weeks into their acquaintance, Ornanong invited him to a local festival. "Tourists never see real Thailand," she explained. "Always beach, always party. I show you something different." Derek accepted without hesitation. That evening, wandering through streets hung with paper lanterns, tasting street food from smoking woks, watching traditional dancers move in patterns ancient as the temples themselves, Derek felt something shift inside his chest. The weight he had carried since the funeral seemed lighter, the future less frightening. They walked along the beach after the festival, waves phosphorescent in the darkness. Ornanong spoke of loneliness, of being 28 and watching friends marry while she poured her energy into work, into building something stable in an uncertain world. Derek shared his own story, the marriage, the loss, the terrifying freedom of late middle age without anchor or purpose. When their hands touched, it felt inevitable, natural as breathing. "I like you, Derek," she said quietly. "You different from other Farang. You listen. You see me, not just beautiful girl serving food." The word beautiful hung in the humid air between them. Derek wanted to tell her she was more than beautiful, wanted to explain that her intelligence, her ambition, her vulnerability called to something in him he thought had died with his wife. Instead, he simply squeezed her hand. "I see you," he replied, "and what I see is extraordinary." The relationship deepened quickly, perhaps too quickly, but Derek was beyond caring about proper timelines or conventional wisdom. After decades of measured decisions and careful planning, spontaneity felt liberating. Ornanong filled the void his wife's death had created, not by replacing what was lost, but by offering something entirely new. She was passion where his wife had been comfort, unpredictability where there had been routine. Derek found himself thinking about her constantly, checking his phone for messages, counting hours until they could meet again. Their first kiss happened 3 weeks after the festival, in the garden of a hillside temple overlooking the ocean. The moment felt stolen from time itself, incense smoke curling upward, the distant sound of monks chanting, the sun painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. When their lips met, Derek felt something break open inside him, a dam holding back months of grief and loneliness finally giving way. Stop for a second. What strikes you as suspicious in this story? Write in the comments what warning signs you see. That night changed everything between them. The boundary between friendship and romance dissolved, replaced by something more intense, more consuming. Ornanong became the center of Derek's world, the axis around which his days revolved. They spent evenings in her small apartment above a pharmacy in Phuket town, eating takeaway food and watching Thai films Derek barely understood, her head resting against his shoulder while she translated dialogue and cultural references. They explored hidden beaches, climbed to viewpoints tourists never found, shared secrets in the darkness while ceiling fans turned lazy circles overhead. The intimacy that grew between them felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Derek had been with exactly one woman his entire adult life, his wife, his college sweetheart, the mother of his children. Every touch with Ornanong was discovery. Every moment together a revelation. She made him feel young again, desired, vital. The 27 years separating their ages seemed insignificant compared to the connection they shared. But beneath the romance, small details began accumulating. Tiny inconsistencies Derek noticed but chose to ignore. Ornanong always showered alone, always dressed and undressed in the bathroom, with the door locked. She deflected questions about her past relationships with vague answers about bad experiences and broken trust. She refused to video call his children, claiming she felt shy about meeting them remotely, preferring to wait until they could meet in person. Her family, upcountry, remained mysteriously unavailable for visits, always busy with harvest or temple obligations or illness. Derek told himself these quirks were cultural differences, protective mechanisms, developed in a society he barely understood. He had read enough about Thailand to know that people here valued privacy, that rushing introductions to family was considered inappropriate, that modesty in relationships was still cherished, despite Western influence. Every rational explanation he constructed seemed plausible, reasonable, acceptable. 2 months into their relationship, Ornanong suggested Derek move into her apartment. "You pay too much for villa," she argued practically. "Stay with me. Save money. Be closer." Derek's lease had another month remaining, but the idea appealed to him deeply. The villa, despite its luxury, felt empty when he returned alone. Ornanong's cramped 2-room apartment offered something the beachfront property never could: companionship, intimacy, the simple comfort of another person's presence. He moved in 3 days later, bringing clothes and toiletries and leaving furniture behind. His accountant in London sent increasingly concerned emails about the extended sabbatical, but Derek brushed them aside. He had decades of accumulated leave, substantial savings, and for the first time since university, no desire to return to the structured, predictable life waiting for him in London. Phuket had become home. Ornanong had become everything. Living together revealed new dimensions of their relationship, layers Derek hadn't imagined during their courtship. Ornanong proved to be meticulous about cleanliness, organizing Derek's possessions with precision that bordered on obsessive. She cooked elaborate Thai meals, teaching him the difference between southern and northern cuisine, the balance of sweet, sour, salty, and spicy that defined her country's food. She sang in the shower, always with the door locked, always the same sad ballads Derek couldn't translate, but found hauntingly beautiful. The nights they shared pushed Derek beyond comfort zones he had inhabited for decades. Intimacy with Ornanong was different from anything he had experienced with his wife. More experimental, more adventurous, charged with an energy that felt almost desperate. She initiated encounters that left Derek breathless and slightly bewildered, always steering physical contact in specific directions, always maintaining certain boundaries Derek barely noticed until much later. When dawn broke after those nights, Derek would lie awake, watching Ornanong sleep, studying the curve of her cheek, the flutter of her eyelashes, the rise and fall of her breathing. Love felt like too small a word for what he felt. Gratitude, desire, dependency. These emotions tangled together into something more complex, more consuming than simple affection. He had found a reason to continue living, a purpose beyond grief and memory. Nothing else mattered. The money requests started subtly, almost apologetically. First, it was her motorbike breaking down, $300 for repairs. Then her younger brother needed university tuition, $800. Her mother required dental surgery, $1,200. Derek paid each time without hesitation, even when the amounts increased and the explanations grew vaguer. He told himself this was what people in relationships did, supported each other, shared burdens, built futures together. His accountant's warnings grew more insistent. Derek, I'm seeing transactions to Thai accounts that concern me. Substantial amounts transferred monthly. I need to know if these are legitimate business expenses or personal, Derek interrupted. It's personal, Malcolm. My private life is no longer your concern. Your investments are my concern, Malcolm replied sharply. You're depleting liquid assets at an alarming rate. If this continues, you'll need to start selling property or securities, which will trigger tax implications and… Derek ended the call mid-sentence. He didn't need Malcolm's judgment, didn't want lectures about fiscal responsibility from a man who had never known real love, real connection. Money was replaceable. What he and Ornanong shared was not. But even Derek, swimming in the depths of infatuation, couldn't ignore every warning sign. 3 months into living together, he noticed Ornanong taking phone calls late at night, speaking rapid Thai in whispers, always stepping onto the balcony where he couldn't hear. She became evasive about her schedule, claiming shifts at the restaurant that seemed to coincide with Derek's rare evenings out. Twice he returned home early to find the apartment locked from inside. Ornanong emerging from the bathroom flushed and nervous, claiming she had been napping. Friends Derek had made in Phuket's expat community started avoiding him. A British retiree he played chess with at a cafe pulled him aside one morning. Derek, mate, I don't know how to say this delicately, so I'll just say it. The girl you're with, Ornanong, she's got a reputation. Multiple foreign boyfriends over the past few years, all ending the same way. Men arriving in Thailand alone, falling hard, spending everything, then disappearing broke and broken. You're not the first, and I'm afraid you won't be the last. Derek's response was immediate and harsh. You don't know her. You see a beautiful Thai woman with a foreign man and assume the worst. That's prejudice, pure and simple. Ornanong is educated, ambitious, genuine. Maybe you can't imagine someone like her could actually love someone like me without ulterior motives. But that's your limitation, not reality. The chess player shrugged sadly. I hope you're right, Derek. I genuinely do. But I've lived here 12 years. I've seen this pattern repeat until I could script it blindfolded. Just be careful, yeah? Protect yourself. Derek stopped going to the cafe. He stopped answering calls from London, except his children's occasional check-ins. And even those became briefer, more strained. His daughter asked pointed questions about money, about his plans to return, about the relationship she had heard rumors of through the expat grapevine. Derek deflected, changed subjects, eventually stopped answering her calls entirely. Isolation crept in gradually, wrapping around Derek like morning fog. His world contracted until it contained only 2 people, himself and Ornanong. She became his entire social circle, his confidant, his lover, his purpose. When she smiled, his day brightened. When she was distant or cold, panic seized his chest. The power dynamic had shifted without him noticing. He no longer made decisions independently, no longer planned his days without consulting her first. The financial requests became demands. Her restaurant closed. She needed capital to start the boutique hotel she had always dreamed of, $30,000 as a down payment on property. Derek hesitated for the first time, sensing something fundamentally wrong with the request. But Ornanong's tears dissolved his resistance. You don't trust me, she sobbed. After everything we share, you think I lie, I cheat. Like everyone else, you see Thai girl with foreign man and think bar girl. Think scammer. I thought you different, Derek. I thought you loved me. I do love you, Derek protested desperately. Of course I trust you. I'm sorry. It's a large amount, and I need to liquidate investments, which takes time. Give me a week. She dried her tears, kissed him softly, whispered promises against his mouth that made rational thought impossible. Derek transferred the money 3 days later, watching his life savings diminish with a sick feeling in his stomach he couldn't quite name. The turning point came on a sweltering afternoon in late October. Derek had left the apartment to replace his failing laptop, planning to be gone several hours. But the computer shop finished the setup faster than expected, and Derek returned home 90 minutes after leaving. The apartment door was locked from inside. Derek knocked, called Ornanong's name, heard frantic movement within. Minutes passed before she opened the door, hair disheveled, wearing only a silk robe, breathing hard. "You scared me," she gasped. "I sleeping, having nightmare. Why you home so early?" They finished quickly, Derek explained, stepping inside. The apartment felt charged with tension, wrong somehow. "Are you all right? You look upset." "Just bad dream," she insisted, but her eyes wouldn't meet his. "I take shower, okay? Then we go eat somewhere nice." She disappeared into the bathroom. Derek stood in the living room, that nameless sick feeling growing stronger. Something was off. The curtains were drawn despite the heat. The bedroom door closed, an unfamiliar smell in the air, cologne, masculine and sharp. He walked to the bedroom, opened the door. The room appeared normal, bed neatly made, Ornanong's clothes organized in the closet. But on the nightstand, something caught his eye. A small black device, smaller than a pack of cigarettes, with a tiny red light blinking in the shadows. Derek picked it up, turned it in his hands. Recognition came slowly, disbelief fighting comprehension. A wireless camera angled toward the bed, recording, light still active. His hands began shaking.
He searched the room with new eyes, finding 2 more cameras hidden in decorative items. One in a picture frame, one in a ceramic elephant. All 3 recording lights active. The shower stopped running. Derek's mind raced, scenarios flashing through his consciousness faster than he could process. Hidden cameras, recorded footage, their intimate moments captured without his knowledge or consent. But why? For what purpose? He confronted Ornanong the moment she emerged from the bathroom, cameras clutched in his trembling hand. "What are these? What the hell are these?" Her face transformed. The warm, loving expression Derek knew, vanishing like smoke, replaced by something cold and calculating. For several seconds, she said nothing, simply stared at him with eyes that suddenly seemed to belong to a stranger. "Give those back," she finally said, voice flat and emotionless. "Answer me. Why are there cameras filming our bedroom? Have you been recording us?" "Give them back." She stepped closer, hand extended. "You don't understand situation, Derek. You don't know what you holding." "Then explain it to me." Derek's voice broke, months of suppressed anxiety erupting. "Explain why the woman I love, the woman I've given everything to, has been secretly filming our most private moments." Ornanong's laugh was harsh, bitter. "The woman you love? You stupid, stupid man. You don't even know who you loving." She crossed to the closet, pulled out a locked metal box Derek had seen 100 times but never questioned. From her robe pocket, she produced a key, opened the box,
and withdrew a stack of documents. Thai medical records, official stamps, a name Derek didn't recognize. "Read," she commanded, thrusting papers at him. "Read and finally see truth." Derek's Thai language skills were minimal, but certain English words scattered through the documents were impossible to misunderstand. Gender reassignment surgery, hormone therapy, male to female transition, and a name, Somchaithong Prasert, listed as patient. The apartment tilted. Derek stumbled backward, documents falling from numb fingers. His mind refused to process the implications, rejected the information his eyes were receiving. This was a mistake, a misunderstanding. Someone else's records mixed with Ornanong's by error. "You lie," he whispered. "These aren't. You cannot be transgender," Ornanong finished, voice dripping with mockery. "Cannot be person born in wrong body who fix mistake with surgery? Or cannot be person you sleep with for 3 months without knowing truth?" Subscribe now and write in the comments. Have you or anyone you know encountered similar deception in relationships? Derek sank onto the sofa, mind fragmenting. Every intimate moment they had shared replayed in his memory, each one recolored by this revelation. The locked bathroom doors, the specific ways she directed their physical contact, the boundaries she maintained, the lights she insisted remain off. All of it suddenly, horrifyingly clear. "How long?" he croaked. "How long have you been recording us?" "From beginning," Ornanong answered matter-of-factly. "First time you come to apartment, every time after. Very good footage, very explicit. Worth lot of money to right buyer." "Blackmail," Derek breathed. "This was all, everything we had. It was blackmail set up from the start." She shrugged, indifferent to his anguish. "You not first, Derek. Not even 10th. Rich foreign men come to Thailand looking for young, beautiful women to make them feel special. Feel alive again. So easy to give them what they want, make them fall in love, make them trust. Then take money. Take more money. And when money running out, take final payment with videos." "But I loved you," Derek said, voice breaking. "I gave you everything. I ruined my relationship with my children for you. I alienated my friends, spent my savings, changed my entire life. That meant nothing to you, nothing at all." For a moment, something flickered in Ornanong's eyes. Regret, perhaps, or recognition of the damage done. But it vanished quickly, replaced by hard pragmatism. "Mean nothing," she confirmed. "Business, Derek. Only business. And now business time is here." She retrieved a laptop from the bedroom, opened files, showing thumbnail after thumbnail of video footage. Derek and Ornanong together in positions that made his stomach turn to watch. $100,000. And all copies deleted forever. Simple deal. "I don't have that kind of money left," Derek protested. "You've already taken most of my liquid assets. I'd have to sell my house, borrow against my pension." "Then sell house," Ornanong interrupted coldly. "Or video goes to your children, your business associates, everyone in your email contacts. Maybe I sell to porn website too. Make extra money." Title could be British Businessman Loves Ladyboy Without Knowing. Very popular genre. The cruelty was breathtaking.
Derek stared at this person he thought he knew, searching for any trace of the woman he had fallen in love with. But she was gone, if she had ever existed at all. Everything had been performance, calculation, manipulation. "Get out," Derek said quietly. "What?" "Get out of your apartment. Let me think. I can't be near you right now. I need to think." Ornanong smiled coldly. "My apartment, remember? You guessed here. You leave, I stay. Take cameras with you if you want. I have backup files secured online, password protected, ready to send with one click. You have 48 hours to decide. Transfer $100,000 to account I give you, or whole world sees British businessmen's secret vacation activities." She dressed quickly, gathered the medical documents, locked the laptop in its case. At the door she paused, looking back at Derek crumpled on the sofa. "Could have been different," she said softly. "If you just gave hotel money and left Thailand happy, I might have let you go clean. But you wanted to stay, wanted to play house, wanted to introduce me to children. Got too serious, Derek. Made this complicated when it should have been simple." The door closed behind her. Derek sat alone in the apartment, surrounded by furniture they had chosen together, decorations she had selected, memories that turned toxic in his mind. The ceiling fan turned lazy circles overhead, the same fan that had witnessed every moment of their relationship, every whispered promise, every intimate encounter. All of it recorded, all of it weaponized, all of it for sale. He stayed on that sofa for hours, as sunset painted the walls orange and purple, as darkness claimed the room and traffic noise faded from the streets below. His phone buzzed with messages from Ornanong, bank account numbers, payment instructions, deadline reminders. Derek ignored them all, mind circling the same impossible question. How had he become this person? How had a Cambridge-educated investor with decades of business experience been reduced to a mark in a scam so obvious he should have seen it from miles away? The answer, he realized with crushing clarity, was loneliness. Not the garden variety loneliness of solitude, but the desperate, hollow, soul-crushing loneliness that follows devastating loss. Ornanong hadn't needed to be particularly clever or sophisticated. She had simply identified a vulnerable target and given him exactly what he needed: warmth, desire, purpose, hope. Everything else followed inevitably from that first gesture of kindness in the beachside restaurant. Derek's phone rang. His daughter's number. He stared at it until voicemail answered. Unable to face her concern, unable to explain where he was or what had happened. How could he tell her that her father, the man who taught her to analyze contracts and spot red flags, who warned her about predatory relationships and manipulative people, had been comprehensively destroyed by the most obvious scam imaginable? But as the night deepened and Derek's shock began giving way to something harder, something colder, a different question emerged. What if he didn't pay? What if he called Ornanong's bluff, accepted the humiliation, and walked away with whatever dignity remained? His children would be shocked, certainly. His professional reputation might suffer, but he would survive. The videos couldn't ruin him unless he let them. And paying $100,000 wouldn't guarantee the footage disappeared anyway. It would more likely mark him as a reliable victim, vulnerable to endless extortion. Derek pulled out his laptop, opened a browser, began researching. Thai law regarding blackmail, revenge pornography, extortion, tourist police procedures, legal recourse for foreign nationals, embassy contacts. The information was discouraging. Prosecution was difficult. Evidence standards high. Cultural attitudes toward gender identity complex. Most victims simply paid and fled, preferring expensive silence to messy exposure. But Derek kept digging, finding forums where other foreigners shared similar experiences. Men from Britain, America, Australia, Germany, all with nearly identical stories. Beautiful women, rapid romance, financial requests, eventual blackmail. Some involved gender deception like Derek's situation. Others were straight scams without that added violation. But the pattern remained consistent. Target, seduce, isolate, extract, threaten. One forum thread caught Derek's attention. A retired Australian police officer had posted about organizing victims to file collective complaints with tourist police. They ignore individual cases, the officer wrote, but multiple coordinated reports with documentation might force action. I'm collecting evidence. If you've been scammed in Phuket or Bangkok, contact me. Derek sent a message before he could reconsider, providing basic details without identifying information. The response came within an hour. I know Ornanong. Real name, Somchai Tong Prasert. Operated in Phuket for 5 years, Bangkok before that. At least 15 confirmed victims I'm aware of. Probably dozens more who never reported. Working with organized network that provides fake identities, safe houses, money laundering. You're lucky you found out before losing everything. Some men lost 100,000 or more before realizing. You interested in helping bring them down? Derek read the message 3 times. The old Derek, the cautious businessman who calculated risk and avoided confrontation, would have declined, paid the extortion and fled to London with what remained of his savings and dignity. But that Derek had died in Ornanong's apartment when the cameras were revealed. The new Derek, raw and furious and finally, blessedly clear-eyed, understood that running would change nothing. Ornanong would continue targeting vulnerable men, destroying lives, accumulating victims. Yes, he typed. Tell me what you need. The Australian, he identified himself as Marcus Webb, former Melbourne detective turned Phuket expat, explained the plan. Derek would pretend to capitulate, agreeing to pay the 100,000. But instead of transferring funds, he would arrange a meeting to hand over cash, claiming he couldn't access that much money electronically without triggering bank fraud alerts. At the meeting, Derek would be wearing a concealed recording device, provided by Marcus's contact in tourist police. The conversation would be recorded, establishing clear evidence of extortion. Tourist police would arrest Ornanong and her network, seizing computers and evidence. It's risky, Marcus warned. These networks can be violent when threatened, and Thai justice system is unpredictable at best. But if you're willing to testify, stick around for trial, you might actually get justice, instead of just losing money. Derek thought about his empty house in London, his strained relationship with his children, his abandoned career. What exactly was he returning to? A life of quiet desperation and memory, counting down years until death? Or could he find some meaning in this disaster? Some purpose in preventing other men from suffering similar devastation? I'm in, he told Marcus. Whatever it takes. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Derek met Marcus at a quiet cafe, received the recording equipment, practiced natural conversation while wearing the wire. He learned that Ornanong's network included at least 4 other trans women operating similar scams. plus 2 men who handled technical operations and money laundering. The network had connections to certain police officers, making prosecution difficult, but not impossible. Derek would need to be cautious, smart, and very, very lucky. He texted Ornanong, "I'll pay, but need to give you cash. Can't transfer that much without bank investigating. Meet me Thursday, 2 p.m. That coffee shop near Wat Chalong. Bring laptop with all files. Show me deletion process before I hand over money." Her reply was immediate. "You smarter than I thought. Okay, but you try anything stupid. Video goes live immediately. Understand?" Understood. Just want this over. Thursday arrived bright and searingly hot. Humidity making the air feel sonid. Derek woke in the hotel room Marcus had arranged, anxiety and determination warring in his chest. He showered, dressed in light cotton clothing that concealed the recording wire taped to his torso. Checked himself in the mirror. The man looking back seemed older than 55. Grey creeping into his beard, lines carved deep around his eyes. But there was something new in his expression. A hardness that hadn't existed before Phuket, before Ornanong, before the cameras. "You don't have to do this," Marcus said, checking the recording equipment one final time. "You can still pay and leave. No shame in protecting yourself." "There's nothing left to protect," Derek replied. "She took everything except my self-respect, and I'm not letting her take that too." The coffee shop overlooked Chalong Bay, tourist boats bobbing in the water below. Derek arrived 15 minutes early, chose a corner table with clear sightlines. Ordered coffee he couldn't imagine drinking. His hands trembled slightly. Whether from fear or rage, he couldn't determine. Ornanong arrived precisely at 2 p.m. Carrying a designer handbag and wearing expensive sunglasses. She looked stunning, Derek noted distantly, like an actress or model rather than an extortionist. But her beauty no longer affected him. He saw through the surface now, recognized the calculation behind every gesture, every smile. She sat across from him, ordered iced tea, waited until the server left before speaking. "You have money?" "In my hotel room," Derek lied smoothly. "Show me the files first. Prove they exist and you can delete them." Ornanong pulled out her laptop, opened it to reveal dozens of video thumbnails. Derek's stomach clenched, seeing himself in those frozen images. Seeing the intimacy he had believed genuine, displayed as commodity. She clicked one file, let it play for 5 seconds, enough for Derek to recognize the date, the location, the devastating reality. "Satisfied?" she asked. "Or you want to watch whole collection?" "How do I know you'll delete them after I pay?" Derek asked, keeping his voice steady, ensuring the wire caught every word clearly. "How do I know this isn't just the beginning of endless blackmail?" Ornanong shrugged. "You don't know. You trust me, same as you trusted before." Her smile was cruel. "But what choice you have? Pay, and maybe I delete. Don't pay, and definitely I send to everyone." Simple math, Derek. "So this has been blackmail from the start," Derek pressed. "The relationship, the romance, all of it was just setting me up for extortion? From start," she confirmed casually. "You think I fall in love with old British man naturally? You think I can't find better man? Younger man? Richer man? I choose you because you lonely. You vulnerable. You have money to take, same as all the others before you." The words were perfect evidence, exactly what Marcus needed. Derek felt a surge of satisfaction even as Ornanong's contempt cut deep. She had no idea she was confessing to crimes on recording, had no suspicion that Derek was anything other than a broken man preparing to hand over his savings.
How many others? Derek asked quietly. How many men have you done this to? She considered the question, seemingly unconcerned. In 5 years? Maybe 20, 30. I lose count. Some pay big, some pay small. Some I keep for months, some just few weeks. You were moderate. Not biggest payout, not smallest. Just average victim. And the gender thing? Derek made himself ask. Was revealing that part of the plan too? No, Ornanong admitted. You find out by accident. Most men never know. I'm very careful usually. But you came home early. I got careless. Doesn't matter now though. Makes blackmail stronger actually. You more ashamed. More willing to pay to keep secret. Derek nodded slowly, absorbing the casual cruelty. In that moment, watching Ornanong sip her tea and scroll through blackmail videos like someone reviewing vacation photos, Derek understood that she genuinely felt no remorse. He was not a person to her, not even a victim worthy of sympathy. He was simply a source of income, a transaction completed. The tourist police moved in smoothly, professionally. 2 officers approached the table while 4 more secured the exits, preventing any chance of escape. Ornanong's expression transformed from smug confidence to shocked disbelief as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. What? Derek, what you do? What I should have done months ago, Derek replied, standing as officers confiscated her laptop and phone. I stopped being your victim and became your witness instead. The arrest created chaos in the coffee shop. Tourists stared, pulled out phones to record, murmured questions in multiple languages. Officers read charges in Thai and English: extortion, computer crimes, identity fraud, illegal recording. Ornanong shouted threats, promised Derek would regret this, swore revenge. But her words carried no power anymore. She was just another criminal being processed, another face in the justice system's machinery. At the police station, Derek provided his full statement, turned over the wire recording, met 2 other victims who had come forward after Marcus's outreach. Both were in their 50s or 60s. Both had lost substantial amounts. Both looked at Derek with recognition and shared pain. The Brotherhood of Fools, Derek thought darkly, united by loneliness and manipulation. The investigation expanded rapidly. Police raided apartments, seized servers, arrested network members. Ornanong's organization proved extensive: 7 trans women, running concurrent scams, 3 money launderers, 2 corrupt police officers providing protection. Forensic analysis of seized computers revealed evidence of at least 42 victims, spanning 8 years. Most had paid and vanished. Some had been bled dry slowly over months. A few had committed suicide after exposure or financial ruin. Derek stayed in Phuket for the trial, testifying about the relationship, the deception, the blackmail attempt. His testimony was calm, detailed, devastating. Ornanong's defense argued cultural misunderstandings, claimed she truly cared for Derek, and money was just help between loving partners. But the wire recording destroyed that narrative, her own words condemning her irrevocably. The judge sentenced her to 5 years for computer crimes and extortion, 3 years for identity fraud, sentences to run consecutively. Other network members received similar sentences. Derek felt no satisfaction in the verdict, no triumph in her imprisonment, just exhaustion and a hollow sense of loss. His children flew to Thailand for the trial's final days, offering support Derek didn't deserve, but desperately needed. His daughter held him while he wept in his hotel room. Not from grief over Ornanong,
but from shame that he had let it reach this point, that his judgment had failed so completely. "You were grieving, Dad," she said softly. "You were vulnerable. What happened to you could happen to anyone." "But it shouldn't have happened to me," Derek protested. "I spent my career analyzing risk, spotting fraud. I should have known better." "Knowing about manipulation intellectually doesn't protect you when you're drowning emotionally," his son observed. "Scammers are successful precisely because they target people when they're weakest, then exploit that vulnerability ruthlessly. That's not your failure. That's their crime." Derek returned to London 3 months after the trial ended, closing his Phuket chapter permanently. The house felt smaller than he remembered, emptier, despite furniture and possessions. His wife's presence still lingered in photograph placements and decorative choices, but the acute pain had dulled to manageable melancholy. He started therapy, finally, unpacking not just the Phuket disaster, but decades of emotional avoidance, fear of intimacy, inability to ask for help when drowning. The therapist helped Derek understand that his vulnerability to Ornanong's manipulation ran deeper than simple loneliness. His marriage, while loving, had been emotionally limited. He and his wife never discussed feelings deeply, never examined the distance growing between them over decades. When she died, Derek found himself emotionally illiterate, unable to process grief except through avoidance. Ornanong had offered what seemed like emotional connection, but was actually performative intimacy, designed to exploit that exact deficit. "You were seeking authentic connection," the therapist explained, "and you found an excellent actor instead. The tragedy isn't that you fell for it. The tragedy is that our culture doesn't teach men how to build genuine emotional intimacy, so they remain vulnerable to anyone who mimics it convincingly." Slowly, painfully, Derek rebuilt his life. He reconnected with his children, joining them for holidays and helping with grandchildren he had barely known. He returned to his investment firm but transitioned from active management to advisory roles, acknowledging that his focus and judgment had been compromised. He joined a support group for romance scam victims, finding solidarity with others who had lost money and dignity to sophisticated manipulation. What warning signs in relationships can never be ignored? Share in the comments. Your experience might save someone from similar devastation. 2 years after returning to London, Derek received an email from Marcus Webb. Ornanong had been released early for good behavior and deportation to a home province. But the investigation her arrest triggered had grown far beyond their case. Thai authorities, under international pressure, launched sweeping operations against romance scam networks throughout the country. Dozens of operations were dismantled, hundreds of victims identified, millions of dollars in assets frozen or returned. Your willingness to testify instead of just paying made all this possible, Marcus wrote. The other guys who came forward, the expanded investigation, none of that happens if you run scared like most victims. You turned your worst experience into something meaningful. That takes courage most men don't have. Derek saved the email but found no satisfaction in it. Stopping Ornanong's network felt like closing the barn door after the horse had not only fled, but trampled half the countryside. Other scammers would replace those arrested. New technologies would enable new forms of exploitation. Vulnerable people, not just men, not just in Thailand but everywhere, would continue falling for manipulative strangers, offering precisely what loneliness craved. But maybe Marcus was right about one thing.
meaning could be extracted from devastation. Derek started volunteering with organizations educating travelers about romance scams, sharing his story despite the humiliation it brought. He spoke at community centers, retirement communities, divorce support groups, anywhere lonely people might be planning solo trips to exotic locations, hoping for renewal. I lost over £80,000, months of my life, and nearly my relationship with my children, Derek would tell audiences. His voice steady despite the shame, but the real cost was what I lost about myself. The belief that I was smart enough, careful enough, immune to manipulation. I wasn't. None of us are when loneliness and grief create blind spots wide enough to drive trucks through. He showed audiences Ornanong's photo, described the manipulation techniques, explained the red flags he ignored. Some listeners looked skeptical, convinced they would never fall for something so obvious. Derek recognized that skepticism. He had felt it himself before Phuket. Now he knew that certainty itself was dangerous, a vulnerability waiting to be exploited. If you're alone, grieving, divorced, or simply lonely, Derek concluded his presentations. Please understand that scammers specifically target that pain. The beautiful stranger who seems interested in you, who listens intently, who makes you feel seen and desired. That person might be genuine. But they might also be an actor, delivering a performance refined over years and dozens of victims. Be skeptical. Be cautious. Be slow to trust and slower to transfer money. And most importantly, talk to someone you trust before making major decisions during vulnerable periods. 5 years after Phuket, Derek met someone new, a widow from his therapy group who understood loss and vulnerability intimately. Their relationship developed slowly, carefully, with transparency about fears and boundaries. She knew his history, had heard about Ornanong during group sessions, understood why Derek needed time and patience. They built trust through small gestures over months, through honesty about insecurities, through shared grief transformed into mutual support. I'm terrified, Derek admitted on their 10th date, holding her hand across a restaurant table. I'm terrified I'll see manipulation where there's genuine affection. I'm terrified I'll destroy something real because I can't trust my judgment anymore. I'm terrified too, she replied. Terrified I'll invest in someone emotionally and have them leave like my husband did. We're both damaged, Derek. But maybe damaged people understand each other in ways whole people never could. They married 18 months later, a small ceremony with children and close friends. Derek's daughter gave a toast that made him cry. My father taught me that wisdom isn't avoiding mistakes. It's learning from them so profoundly that you transform pain into protection for others. Dad, you turned the worst experience of your life into a mission to protect people. That's the definition of courage. But late at night, alone with thoughts while his wife slept peacefully beside him, Derek still sometimes wondered about Ornanong. Where was she now? Had prison changed her? Or did she simply view incarceration as an occupational hazard? Were there new victims? New, lonely men falling into traps identical to the one that caught him? And most troubling, how many men never reported, never testified, simply paid and carried their shame silently to graves? The questions had no satisfying answers. Justice was imperfect, incomplete, often absent entirely. But
Derek had learned that meaning existed not in perfect outcomes, but in imperfect choices to stop being passive victims. He couldn't save everyone. He couldn't undo his own mistakes or prevent all future tragedies. But he could speak honestly about vulnerability and manipulation, could offer warnings to those still naive enough to believe themselves immune. 7 years after meeting Ornanong in that beachside restaurant, Derek sat in his London study, writing his memoir. Not for publication, the story was too personal, too raw, but for his grandchildren, so they might understand their grandfather's journey, from grief, through manipulation, to hard-won wisdom. He wrote about loneliness after loss, about vulnerability making even intelligent people susceptible to sophisticated exploitation, about the long road from shame to acceptance. The final chapter addressed his grandchildren directly. You will face loneliness in your lives. You will lose people you love, experience rejection, endure periods when connection seems impossible. In those moments, you will be vulnerable to anyone offering what you desperately need: love, acceptance, purpose, hope. And you must understand that predators specifically hunt in those territories, targeting the lonely and grieving like wolves targeting separated prey. This is not paranoia. This is reality. Beautiful strangers might genuinely want to know you, or they might want access to your wallet. Moving quickly in relationships might be exciting spontaneity, or it might be deliberate pressure designed to bypass rational thinking. Financial requests from new partners might be temporary hardship, or they might be the hook in a long-planned scam. I cannot tell you how to distinguish genuine from false in every situation. Sometimes you won't know until it's too late. But I can tell you this: slow down, trust slowly, verify independently, and never, ever make major financial decisions while emotionally vulnerable without consulting people who love you and want nothing from you. The woman I met in Phuket destroyed me financially and emotionally. She stole money I needed for retirement. She violated my privacy in ways I still struggle to accept. She weaponized intimacy, turning what should have been connection into exploitation. But she also taught me lessons I could have learned no other way. About vulnerability, about authentic connection, about the difference between performance and truth. If you remember nothing else from my story, remember this: loneliness makes you vulnerable, but vulnerability doesn't make you weak. Seeking connection is human. Falling for manipulation is human. What matters is how you respond when you discover the truth, whether you hide in shame or speak honestly about the experience, protecting yourself and potentially others from similar harm. I chose to speak. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and the most important. And if this memoir prevents even one of you from experiencing what I endured, every word was worth writing. Love always, your fallible, wiser, and deeply grateful grandfather. If this story made you think differently about vulnerability, relationships, and manipulation, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. What warning signs can never be ignored? What lessons from Derek's experience resonate most? Your insights might be exactly what someone else needs to hear before making a devastating mistake. And remember, seeking connection doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. The tragedy is when predators exploit that humanity for profit.